Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I want to put some information before you. A lot of you are aware that I have been dealing with the federal courts here in North Carolina for state sovereignty violation on how the federal government violates your rights from your state and bring charges against you. And a lot of you don't know, and I've been experimenting and I've been testing the waters, is what I did is on a conviction in DC. I made issues in DC of Article 4, Section 1 and 2, full faith and credit from one state to the next. 14th Amendment, you can't abridge law from one state to the next. Title 42, 1981, equal protection under the law from one state to the next. And all this was disregarded. We brought up that the prosecutor committed perjury under a sworn oath. We brought up a number of other issues, such as Title 18, 930. Title 18, 930, possession of a firearm or dangerous weapon on a federal facility. I argued this. Section H. Notice of the provision of subsection A and B shall be posted conspicuously at every public entrance to each federal facility. And notice of subsection E shall be posted conspicuously at every public entry in each federal court facility, and no person shall be convicted of an offense under section A or E with the respect of federal facility if such notice is not posted at such facility. If it ain't posted, you can't be arrested. This was brought up. This was ignored. I brought him into North Carolina. I brought charges administratively for breach of North Carolina sovereignty and North Carolina Constitution and North Carolina laws of the right to carry. This has been a 2-year battle. One was in the administrative court, which they never responded. They never answered. I was required a year later to refile for them to find an answer to get it out of that court. I want to show you the scam that's being ran on us as American people. They supposedly did a removal. Supposedly did a removal. Hold on a minute. Okay. Docket. Let's get in here. Notice of removal. 28 USA 1442. Notice of removal. Looks pretty interesting. Petition for removal. You're assuming that there's a petition. You're assuming. This is what I went back and checked because when this came up, I want to show you something else that's important here. This attorney is no longer with the United States Attorney's Office. This attorney is no longer with the United States Attorney's Office because I was found in for breach of contract. I was found in for breach of oath. I was found in showing they had no admission form and they had no license to practice law in a courtroom. No longer with. No longer with. Terminated. Terminated. A lot of people think what I'm doing is unorthodox. What I do is go back and prove corruption. I don't defend. I point out their errors. I point out their screw ups. But since how this says petition for removal, notice of removal, you would assume that it was legitimately removed. Under Title 28, 1446, a defendant or defendants designed to remove any civil action from a state court shall file into the District Court of the United States. District Court of the United States, not the United States District Court for whatever district. I don't say that. It says District Court of the United States. For the district and division within such action is pending a notice of removal signed. Signed. Pursuant to Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedures and containing a short, plain statement of the grounds for removal, together with a copy of process pleadings. Notice of removal signed. That's the key. That's the key. I've got into my own paperwork out of curiosity. And I looked for under their docket and I put in their wording, District Court of the United States, District Court of the United States, Rule 11. This is out of their book. I'm coming back and I'm showing this. This is the memorandum where she did all her little fancy wording and all the BS that went with it. This is what I'm looking at. Signature. This is what we're looking at. She signed it. Here is the other memorandum. She signed it. Here's the docket sheet. There is nothing on here that shows a removal. There's nothing in here that shows that there was a petition to remove. Notice of removal. Petition for removal. Docket 1. Docket 1. Where's the removal? Ladies and gentlemen, we've been scammed. They do not follow procedures throughout this whole thing. These are all my filings that I filed against them in the administrative court. Everything. Again, I copied this out. I broke this down. Now, to get back and show you again what we're talking about, I put this in as evidence of 930 out of their book. No person shall be convicted of an offense under subsection A or B with respect to a federal facility if such notice is not posted. Their rules. They disregarded the old law. If you get this out of the website, it says the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, the point that I'm making is this. We have three parties involved in a court case. We have three parties involved. The guy out on the street, which is only following orders. He's a good little Indian. The prosecutor is a lawyer. Now, even though this Indian is under an oath to the Constitution and required to know the Constitution and required to know the laws, they don't. The prosecutor, as the lawyer, which is required to know the laws, understand the Constitution, understand the regulations, understand the procedures, under a sworn oath to you, to the Constitution, and then you got to judge. You've got three people here under a sworn oath to protect, uphold, defend, come in compliance with. You got three government entities, whether it's state or federal. You got three government entities. One of them should have corrected the other two, or one of them should have corrected the one and said, we can't do this because the Constitution was violated. What we're looking at here, in all reality, and a lot of people don't look at it from this point of view, and I have brought this up. I have brought this up that under 18 USC 2331, definition of a crime, If you go down to section 5, term for domestic terrorist means activity that invokes acts dangerous to human life that are in violation of the criminal laws of the United States and of any states, appears to be intended to intimidate or coerce the civilian population. When you have 3 government officials under a sworn oath to protect, preserve, defend the Constitution, and they go after the civilian population and disregard their duties, that falls under domestic terrorism. Now, somebody in the Judiciary Committee needs to start paying attention, and we should be getting hearings to have this problem corrected. This is what Trump went through. Trump is exposing, well, they got judicial corruption. You're not getting in deep enough. They didn't uphold their sworn oath. When they refuse to uphold their sworn oath and go against it, against the general population, this falls under domestic terrorism because they're extorting you, they're kidnapping you, they're sexually assaulting you, they're holding you hostage. You have to hire one of theirs to cover up their misconduct. Now, getting into my case. My case went under void order. My magistrate was replaced, but she's the one that cut the order. She was replaced, reassigned. She didn't have any authority to cut an order, and they do it all the time. And we don't catch it. The attorneys sure don't catch it because it's not profitable. But we got into something else. She came back, and I normally don't get into this because I don't argue this, but because she threw this into out there and made this an issue of sitting here saying, well, the United States is sovereign. The United States is sovereign, and you can't sue the United States unless it waives its sovereignty. Well, I tell you what, let's look into the legal definitions of the United States. That was the mistake. Every time you get one of these orders, ladies and gentlemen, if you understand it, there's gold nuggets all through this thing. We're just not looking at the golden nuggets because we're depressed of what they said. That's what they want. Legal definition of the United States generally includes the 50 states, the District of Columbia, and all territories, like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands, and possessions as defined under 21, 387, 22, is often a significant or a federal corporation or other entities with jurisdiction in the areas. 22. The United States, 50 states gets in under 21, 387. 3002, 15. It's a corporation. It's a business. Now, I don't normally argue this. I don't believe in this. But the moment she sat down and said the United States did not give consent, the obvious question is, what's the United States? What's the United States of America? What is the legal term for the United States? And I went back and pulled up the legal terms. The term United States, when used in a geographical sense, is defined as several states and the District of Columbia. Narrow sections of Title V may define the term as on the specific context of the chapter, the federal employees, training, and administrative procedures. And don't call it a government. It calls it an organization. The state, political subdivisions, federal agencies. 18.5, the United States is used in this title as a territorial sense. Everything that we are talking about, the United States is nothing more than a piece of dirt. It's property. And it defines it as such. So, how can a piece of dirt have sovereign immunity? And how can a piece of dirt stand in a courtroom and be the representative? What this means is that prosecutor now is impersonating the United States. Well, I'm here for on the United States half. You're in here on the piece of dirt's half, piece of ground, territory, states. Whereas the United States is defined in Title V of the U.S. Code, specifically concerning travel and expenses for government employees. The United States is defined geographically as the several states and District of Columbia. This is nothing more than dirt that's coming in the courtroom bringing charges. I realize we've never looked at it from this point of view. But ladies and gentlemen, this is what I do. This is what I teach. Go in and tear their paperwork apart. As you've seen, they got terminated. They're no longer U.S. attorneys. Ladies and gentlemen, they want us to follow rules while they break. They're using their position under domestic terrorism against the American people. And we never looked at it from that point of view, but I have been. This is why I do what I do. I expose, I open up. I go back and show that magistrate was removed. She can't file paperwork, can she? She can't cut an order. She disregarded the Constitution of protected rights under Article 4, Section 1 and 2, 14th Amendment, Section 1, Title 42, 1981, Equal Protection. She violated protected rights under the Constitution. When it was pointed out that her prosecutors committed perjury, she disregarded their wrongful acts in order to cover up. Ladies and gentlemen, the judiciary needs to call every one of these people in and fire them. Pam Bondi needs to do her job and start firing her attorneys, because when it is brought up, you did not uphold. Either they come back in and say, we screwed up. And I realize the problem of it is this. It will overturn every court case in this country with what I just exposed. It will overturn. That's not my problem, and that's not yours. Had they had done their job right, we wouldn't be sitting where we're sitting at now. I proved that there was no removal from an administrative court. I proved if it isn't posted, you can't get a conviction. I proved when it says you have to have a signature, I showed you the signature of the magistrate, and there's no documentation of a removal, and there's no signature. That whole removal was based on fraud, lies, and deception. Ladies and gentlemen, you got stuff to think about. Right now, DC's playing all kinds of bullshit games out here, and the people are being left in the dark. And the people need to start sitting here petitioning and raising hell with their local congressmen and saying, we want a judiciary committee. We want a hearing on the court corruption. And while we're at it, I want to know why the oil wells in the United States are not being opened up to reduce gas prices on the American people. Why are we relying on other oil companies when we have our own that Trump could open up in this country to suit us, charge them like they do us, but give us the benefit of our own oil? Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot here that people don't understand. But I do my best to sit here and expose everything I can. Because you just seen these attorneys got terminated. They're no longer with the office. Is that because I was exposed and they told the judge we can't do this and they got fired? Who knows? But they could be whistleblowers to come back in and expose the misconduct and the abuse of the system. Give it some thought, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just sitting here showing you. I'm pointing out their defects. I'm pointing out their errors. I'm not practicing law. I'm giving you information. Thank you very much.